The evening had unfolded with unexpected ease, considering the emotional turbulence Laura had been navigating in recent months. David, her husband, was becoming an increasingly absent figure in her life, each business trip stretching longer than the last, each goodbye colder, each hello more perfunctory. It wasn't just his physical absence that gnawed at her. It was the growing emotional gulf, the creeping silence in conversations that once bubbled with laughter and warmth. Enter Chris, an old college friend whose recent return to town seemed almost serendipitous. He had reached out over social media, his message casual but laden with years of unspoken nostalgia. "Back in town for a new job. Would love to catch up," it read. Laura's heart had leaped at the message, not out of romantic interest, but from a place of deep-seated loneliness and the human need for connection, something she desperately missed. Their reunion was set at a quaint local cafe initially, surrounded by the comforting clatter of coffee cups and the murmur of other lives unfolding around them. However, Chris's genuine interest in her life, his attentive eyes not once straying to his phone, reminded her painfully of what she lacked in her marriage. So when Chris half-jokingly suggested they should continue their catch-up session away from the prying eyes and ears of the bustling cafe, Laura found herself inviting him over to her home, a decision that felt as natural as it was dangerous. The air between them was thick with an easy camaraderie as they stepped into her living room, the setting sun casting long shadows across the floor. Chris looked around, a soft smile playing on his lips as he took in the changes. "You've really made this place beautiful, Laura." His compliment, simple and devoid of any hidden agenda, made Laura's heart swell, a stark contrast to the often indifferent acknowledgments she received from David. They settled onto the plush sofa, steaming cups of coffee in hand, reminiscing about their college antics, their dreams back then, some fulfilled, others abandoned on the wayside of life's unpredictable journey. As the evening wore on, the conversation drifted to more personal territories, Chris's recent divorce and Laura's confession about feeling more like a convenient accessory in David's world than his partner. Chris listened, his expressions a mix of sympathy and anger on her behalf. "You deserve someone who's actually there, Laura. Not just physically, but emotionally. Someone who sees you," he said earnestly. The vulnerability of the moment brought them closer, the distance of years melting away as if they had parted just yesterday. There was an unspoken understanding, a shared loneliness that neither had intended to find solace in when the evening began. But as the night deepened, so did their rediscovered connection. It was almost instinctual, the way their laughter filled the room, the way their shoulders touched lightly, a fleeting contact that sent unexpected shivers down Laura's spine. She knew she was treading dangerous waters, but the human touch, the empathy, the understanding was intoxicating, a salve to her bruised heart. Chris, perhaps sensing her inner turmoil, reached over and squeezed her hand. "Hey, whatever happens, I'm here for you, Laura, just like old times," he whispered. That gesture, meant to comfort, instead sparked a cascade of emotions in Laura, blurring the lines between platonic comfort and something far more profound. The room seemed to shrink, filled with unspoken questions and the weight of decisions Laura wasn't sure she was ready to face. As they stood to clear the coffee cups, their hands brushed again, and this time neither pulled away. There was an electric pause, a silent question hanging between them. But before either could voice the thoughts racing through their minds, the sound of a key turning in the front door shattered the moment. David was home early. The kitchen incident seemed almost inevitable. A playful attempt to whip up a late-night snack together, combined with their easy laughter and light teasing, led to an accidental spill, a splash of red wine across their shirts. It was a moment straight out of a clumsy romantic comedy, with both of them looking down in shock before bursting into laughter. Their laughter echoed in the kitchen, a bright sound that filled the space with warmth. But the laughter did little to hide the growing chemistry between them. "Looks like we could both use a quick rinse," Chris joked, gesturing to his wine-stained shirt. Laura nodded, her face flushed, not just from the wine but from the sudden closeness the moment had fostered. They moved towards the bathroom, each assuming the other was headed to the guest bathroom down the hall. The house, once so familiar to Laura, now seemed charged with a new, electric energy. As they reached the door simultaneously, the mix-up became apparent. They stood there for a brief, awkward moment, the tension palpable. I'll just use this one then," Chris said, his voice a mix of amusement and embarrassment. He held the door open for her, a gentlemanly gesture that somehow made the situation feel even more intimate. Laura hesitated, aware of the impropriety but also oddly drawn by the thrill of the forbidden. "Okay, just give me a minute," she replied, her voice lighter than she felt. Inside the bathroom, the steam from the hot water filled the room quickly, fogging up the mirror and windows. Laura stood under the spray, the water trailing down her face and body, a temporary relief from the heat that had nothing to do with the temperature. Her mind raced with the implications of their closeness, the boundaries they were skirting so dangerously. As she turned off the water, ready to step out, she realized she hadn't heard Chris leave. Wrapped in a towel, she cracked the bathroom door open only to find him still there, his back turned, fixing the faucet in the kitchen that had started leaking. The sight of him, so domestic in her space, sent a new wave of conflicting feelings through her. She leaned against the doorframe, watching him for a moment, the silence between them thick with things unsaid. "Almost got it," Chris said over his shoulder, unaware of her gaze. "Sorry for the impromptu plumbing, just noticed the leak." "No, thank you. I didn't even realize," Laura responded, her voice soft. As Chris turned around, their eyes met, holding each other in a look that said more than words could. The air between them was charged, a silent acknowledgement of the attraction that was growing harder to ignore. The moment stretched on, a single second feeling like forever until the sudden sound of the front door swinging open shattered it. Laura's heart stopped, her stomach dropping as the reality of her husband's return crashed into her like a cold wave. David's voice called out, a casual greeting tinged with the weariness of a long day. "Laura, I'm home early. Caught an earlier flight," he announced, his footsteps growing louder as he approached the kitchen. Panic set in as Laura quickly closed the bathroom door, her mind racing. The sound of her heartbeat was loud in her ears as she grappled with the situation. Chris, hearing David, gave Laura a quick, worried glance before mouthing, "I'll handle this." Stepping out into the hallway, Chris met David first, his expression composed. "Hey, David, didn't expect you back so soon," he said smoothly, trying to deflect any suspicion. David paused, his expression changing from surprise to confusion, then to a dawning realization as he noticed the towels and the faint sound of the shower running in the background. "What's going on here?" His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a hint of the storm that might be brewing just beneath the surface. David's entrance into the kitchen was like a scene frozen in time, each second dragging as he tried to piece together the unexpected tableau before him. There stood Chris, slightly damp with a towel around his neck, and in the background the sound of the shower running was unmistakable. The ambiance of casual domesticity was pierced by a palpable tension that now hung heavily in the air. "Laura?" David's voice was a mix of confusion and dawning realization. His eyes shifted from Chris to the direction of the bathroom, piecing together the narrative that his mind resisted to accept. The atmosphere thickened as his footsteps echoed on the tile floor, each step a drumbeat to Laura's racing heart. Emerging from the bathroom, wrapped in a bathrobe, her hair still damp and clinging to her skin, Laura's appearance did little to quell the storm brewing in David's eyes. "David, it's not what it looks like," she began, her voice faltering under the weight of his stare. The simplicity of the setting belied the complexity of the emotions now swirling between them. Chris, sensing the escalation, stepped forward with a calmness that contrasted sharply with the situation. "David, I can explain," he interjected, attempting to draw David's ire away from Laura. "We were just fixing the leak under the sink and things got a bit messy. We didn't expect you until tomorrow." David's gaze flickered between Laura and Chris, searching for the truth in a sea of half-explanations and hurried justifications. Fixing a leak? At this hour? His voice rose, tinged with skepticism and hurt. And both of you ended up in the shower together? The incredulity in his tone was a clear indication of his grappling with the scenario. Laura stepped closer, her hands reaching out in a gesture of appeasement that David instinctively recoiled from. Please, let me explain, David. Yes, Chris came over to catch up, and the spill was just an accident. It was stupid, I know, but there was nothing more to it. Her eyes pleaded for understanding, for the trust that seemed to be slipping away with every word. David, however, seemed caught in a vortex of betrayal and disbelief. How long has this been going on? He asked, the question loaded with an ache of betrayal. Is this why you've been so distant lately? The connections he was drawing, though misguided, felt real to him in the moment's heated emotions. Chris, standing aside yet still part of the unfolding drama, added, Nothing is going on, David. I swear. It was just an old friend helping out another. That's all. His attempt to diffuse the situation was earnest, yet in the thick of such personal turmoil, his words landed with little effect. The room filled with a heavy silence, the sort that suffocates conversation and deepens the chasms between loved ones. David looked from Chris to Laura, the gears in his mind turning painfully as he considered his next words. Finally, he spoke, his voice softer, but carrying a weight of decision. I think it would be best if you left, Chris, he said, nodding towards the door. Chris cast a sympathetic glance towards Laura, before nodding slowly, a silent agreement to comply for the sake of all parties involved. As he left, the door closing behind him marked a symbolic end to the evening's calm facade. Now alone, the couple faced each other, the aftermath of explanations hanging between them like a thick fog. David, I'm sorry, Laura whispered, her voice a blend of desperation and sincerity. I never meant for any of this to happen. David's response was slow, measured, a man piecing back his thoughts and his trust. I don't know what to think right now, Laura. I need some time. The distance in his voice was more than just physical. It was emotional, a retreat into a space where he could protect himself from further hurt. The night drew on, each moment stretching into eternity as they stood there, the future of their relationship as uncertain as the silence that now enveloped them. It was a crossroads forged not just by tonight's missteps, but by the accumulated distances that had brought them here. The path forward was unclear, clouded by a mix of hurt feelings, broken trust, and the faintest glimmer of hope for reconciliation. With Chris gone, the abrupt silence felt almost suffocating as Laura and David faced each other, the space between them laden with years of unspoken grievances and buried disappointments. The initial shock of the evening's revelations gave way to a more profound discomfort, the kind that comes from staring at the raw edges of a relationship that had been fraying quietly for years. David paced slowly back and forth, each step a visible effort to process not just the night's events but the myriad ways their lives had diverged to this point. I can't believe it has come to this, he began, his voice low and strained, reflecting a mix of anger and hurt. I thought we were okay, that we were managing just fine. Laura watched him, her heart sinking with each word. It wasn't just the incident with Chris that tormented her. It was the deeper realization of how distant they had become. Managing isn't the same as thriving, David, she replied softly, her words tinged with sadness. We've been more like roommates than spouses. You're always away, and when you are home, it's like your mind is still at work. I've been so lonely. David stopped pacing, turning to face her directly. The admission seemed to hit him hard, a stark reminder of his own role in their marital disconnect. I didn't realize you felt so alone, he said, the defensiveness in his voice fading to confusion and concern. Why didn't you tell me it was this bad? I thought I could handle it, that it was just a phase we'd get through, Laura explained, her voice breaking with emotion. But tonight made me see how desperate I've become for connection, for any sign that I'm still seen and valued. The conversation that followed was one of the most honest they'd had in years. David confessed to feeling overwhelmed by his responsibilities, admitting that he had taken her presence and support for granted. Laura shared her feelings of neglect and invisibility, describing how the emotional distance had slowly built a wall between them. As they talked, a painful yet necessary picture emerged of two people who had lost their way in each other's lives. It was clear that both had contributed to the current state of their marriage through their actions and inactions. The conversation was punctuated by moments of silence, heavy with the weight of their shared history and the uncertainty of their future. "We need to decide where we go from here," David said after a long pause, his voice steadier but still filled with uncertainty. "Do we try to fix this, to find our way back to each other, or is it too late?" Laura took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of the decision before them. "I don't know if I can just forget what happened tonight or if you can," she admitted. "But I also can't help but remember all the good times we've had, all the reasons I fell in love with you." David nodded slowly, the conflict evident on his face. "I love you, Laura. I've just been terrible at showing it. Maybe we could try counseling, see if it helps us understand each other better." The suggestion hung between them, a potential lifeline in the tumult of their strained relationship. It was a step, albeit a small one, towards reconciling the chasm that had grown between them. Both knew that it wouldn't be easy, that the path to healing would require more than just a few therapy sessions. It would need a commitment to genuinely listen and understand each other's needs and wounds. As they agreed to explore counseling, there was a tentative sense of hope, a fragile belief that perhaps not all was lost. They understood that whatever the outcome, the process would change them, requiring each to confront their vulnerabilities and resentments. But for the first time in a long while, they faced that prospect together, united by a shared desire to at least try to mend the frayed bonds of their marriage. In the quiet that settled after their decision, both felt a cautious relief. The night had started with a confrontation that threatened to end their marriage, but it was ending with a mutual commitment to face their problems together. It was a testament to the resilience of love, battered and bruised perhaps, but still capable of fighting for survival. The weeks that followed were a testament to both Laura and David's determination to salvage what once had been unshakably strong. The initial counseling sessions were fraught with emotions, often ending in tears, but each session provided a platform for honest communication, something that had been missing for far too long in their marriage. Through the guidance of their counselor, they began to peel back the layers of resentment and misunderstanding that had accumulated over the years. Laura learned to voice her needs more openly, expressing her feelings of loneliness and neglect without the fear of being dismissed. David, in turn, started to recognize the importance of being emotionally available, not just physically present. He made a conscious effort to reduce his business travels and, when home, genuinely engage with Laura, sharing more about his day-to-day life, his challenges, and his successes. As they navigated the complexities of their renewed communication, they also rediscovered the small joys that had first drawn them together. They started to plan regular date nights, sometimes just a quiet evening at home or a movie night, other times a visit to their favorite restaurant. These moments, simple yet significant, began to rekindle the warmth between them. One crisp autumn evening, they took a walk in the park where they had first met, a place that held special memories of youthful hope and early love. As they walked hand in hand, leaves crunching underfoot, David stopped and turned to Laura, his eyes reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. "Laura, I know I've taken us for granted," he admitted, his voice steady but full of emotion. "But these past weeks have shown me how much I've missed not just you, but us, our connection. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused, and I thank you for giving us another chance." Laura squeezed his hand, her eyes moist with a mixture of past sorrow and present joy. "I was lost too," she confessed. "I let my loneliness cloud my judgment and nearly threw away the most important thing in my life, but I've seen your effort, and it means everything to me." Their conversation flowed into plans for the future, discussions of dreams and possibilities, now shared with a newfound clarity and mutual support. They talked about renewing their vows, a symbolic gesture to mark a fresh start, acknowledging the pain of the past, but looking forward to the future with hope. The decision to renew their vows took place on a small, intimate scale, surrounded by close family and friends who had supported them through their toughest times. The ceremony was simple, but every word spoken during their vows resonated with deep significance, reflecting their journey through hardship to a place of mutual respect and renewed love. As they stood together, hand in hand, facing their loved ones, Laura and David felt a sense of accomplishment. They had come through a storm, battered but not broken, now stronger and more in tune with each other. This second chance at love was not just a continuation of their old life, but the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with the lessons learned from their struggles and, the joy of overcoming them together. The journey of reconciliation and rediscovery had transformed their relationship, teaching them the value of patience, the importance of forgiveness, and the strength found in vulnerability. Though the path ahead would undoubtedly offer its own challenges, they now understood that the foundation of their love was unshakable, built on the bedrock of honest communication and genuine affection. With this renewed commitment, Laura and David stepped forward into their future, a future they chose to face together, fortified by the trials they had endured and the love that had grown even stronger in the face of adversity. Their love story, once nearly lost, now promised a new legacy of enduring love and commitment.